Good evening. It is Thursday, March the 7th, about 9:20 p.m. This is meteorologist Shay Gibson bringing you a wind and weather update for the Spring Ocean event this Saturday with the Charleston Ocean Racing Association. And I'll go ahead and minimize myself here, and you can see the home page. And under the skipper's info, I did an update last night, which many of you may have seen on the offshore wind and weather section. I did a more in-depth, broken down by component, and I'm going to kind of do an update tonight and give you a little bit of visual on that. Back to the home page. The race event is down here in the Spring Ocean section. You can check it out there. Let's go ahead and dive right into the weather. Here's what we're expecting Saturday morning. This is the NOAA WPC outlook, and what we're looking at here, this very tricky situation with the stationary front, as mentioned before. Now, earlier runs had this front a little bit to our south and very slow to move to our north. So this is actually a good sign that it stays to our north, and we want it to remain that way, because below that we're looking at high pressure out in the Atlantic to draw in a clockwise flow into the coast and keep that front nudged up to the north and actually increase a little bit of synoptic flow along our coastline. That's what we're really hoping for our area. So as far as the rain's concerned, we have a cold front coming in as well, so maybe that'll help clear some of that out and bring some sunshine out to allow for a little bit of sea breeze activity. So maybe we can get some sea breeze circulation going on to get those winds up a couple more knots from what the models are showing right now. Let's take a quick look at the Storm Prediction Center. Looks like most of the storming, any severe weather is going to remain to our west for Saturday. Sunday looks like a stormy day overall, but we're talking about Saturday here. So going to the HER 3-kilometer precipitation model, this is early Saturday morning at about 4 o'clock a.m. And if we go forward, we see that rain is hanging to the north, but I will caution that we do sometimes see these showers make it across over our area, especially when we have a little bit of a west-southwest flow below that boundary. We could see some showers banking in down from the boundary. Maybe that warm front and cold front combo may traverse down through the Charleston and then back up again. Sometimes we see that happen. There may be a little bit of fog if that west-southwest winds tends to keep that fog away, so we may not be looking at any issues with any severe marine layering where it creates thick bands of fog. Here's the Euro. Now this is 48 hours out Saturday morning, showing that southwest or west-southwest flow below the boundary, which would be up here to our north. And so that's been fairly consistent so far with what the structure is with the cold front, and that's also what NOAA WPC is banking on as well. So that's the Euro look. If we go forward in time, we see the winds straighten out a little bit more from the south-southwest through the day. This is early afternoon, and this should continue, especially if there's sunshine and sea breeze coupling. We'll see those winds really lock in from the south or south-southwest. GFS model also showing a little bit of consistency with that, and it's building the ridge out here, but it's a weak ridge, weak area of high pressure, but it does allow for that southerly flow to bank into the coastline here. And if we go forward through the day, this is early afternoon, the winds don't look that strong. It looks a little bit discombobulated and maybe a little bit of a short wave offshore according to the GFS, but that's not exact yet. And we do have this cold front, like I said, coming in, so maybe this flow will straighten out all the way up towards the Myrtle Beach area. And so if we look at sea surface temperatures, this is what I really want to get into, because we're looking at just offshore, and this is the Sport SST, the NASA product, that shows the cool waters along the coastline. Our shelf waters are very cold, about 58 degrees right now, 58.5 to be exact, and we do expect that to come up a couple of degrees, but either way, with temperatures this low and air temperatures going up, it creates what's called a marine layer, and even at a shallow marine layer, that the air along the water can be more stable, which doesn't allow wind to really mix. And so what you need is an unstable environment for winds. Winds are based on instability, and so that's what happens. Now if we look at the air temperature range for the day, it looks like the ambient air temperatures according to the GFS are going to top out around the mid-70s, maybe translate to upper 70s. That's going to be ambient air temperatures mainly over land and inland. When you get over the water of those cooler shelf waters, we're looking at temperatures being low to mid-60s. So dress accordingly for that. It's going to be cooler along the coastline and just offshore than it will be for this temperature reading right here. And so we go to sail flow. Let's take a look at the sail flow. And the race course, Rattlesnake Shoal out here, looks like the race course is primarily in this zone right here. And this is what I'm talking about. If we have winds coming in off the ocean over those cooler shelf waters, it tends to be weaker because of the stable zone out here. Now once we get inside, I did mention Wednesday, when we get inside the harbor, we see these winds coming across land, and when they come across the surface, they mix with that warm air rising from the land. It's called radiational effects. And so what we get is thermal mixing across the harbor in these areas where you tend to see, we may see 13 to 17 knots inside the harbor, maybe even stronger in gusts towards 20 knots. but out here off the coast we may be only looking at about 8 to 11 knots. So it's that's the thing we deal with this time of the year until the water temperatures rise up until at least the mid to upper 70s, where we start to see breeze coupling allows those winds to build even offshore. So this is the tricky part about it, with the marine layer, the shallow marine layer building in along or just off the coastline. Let's take a look at the model run. Actually, I'll go inside the harbor here to Fort Sumter Front Range Light, and we'll run all the available models. And so what I'm looking for here is some consistency and agreement in the models. And we go out to Friday, we look at Saturday, and Saturday right here is the start time at 10 o'clock a.m. And so the winds look rather weak in the morning according to most of the model agreement. There is some disagreement in directions early based on where that front may be, but as we get into the afternoon, it looks like that sea breeze agreement is starting to come in. The GFS is coming in a little bit higher towards 10 knots to NAM 12. The Wave Watch 3 model and GFS at the top, and then we have the NAM 5 down here below that. So the zone right in here is between 7 and 11 knots, or let's say 7 to 10 knots. But we may see this number come up. In fact, with the sea breeze activity chiming in with some sunshine, we may get those up just a couple more knots. So my call for mainly just along and just offshore is going to remain what I said before, 7 to 11 knots. But if we get a little bit of sea breeze help from that, or a little bit of assistance, minus some of that shallow marine layering, we may see winds come up anywhere from 8 to 12 knots. So that's sort of what I'm banking on right now, is 8 to 12 knots of flow. From, I'd say, noontime all the way through late afternoon. Inside the harbor, probably looking at a stronger wind, so when you're coming back in, you may have a nice little boost for that final leg all the way over, where you have these winds kind of cutting across the harbor, but you'll have something to sail with and some speed finishing off. The tides, as far as the tides go, the main tidal gauge is at the French Quarter here downtown, so we take a quick look at the tides for Saturday. And it looks like high tide's at 9:33 a.m. and that's close to start time, so the tide's going to turn, and it's going to be going out when you leave the harbor and head out to the ocean. And then by the time you turn around, it depends on the winds. If the winds are fast enough, you'll make it back in, but the tide will be outgoing, so there may be a little bit of chop on the water, especially with south wind going against the tide. We end up with some choppy conditions, especially here at the jetties. When we get inside the harbor, it smooths out a little bit, but then it gets pretty choppy over here as well. Where the Ashley River and Cooper River come together. So there's a little bit of chop to the water there, but I think overall, if we look at the wave model for the area, let's take a look at the Weather Service model. This thing has kind of a mind on its own. It wants to run even though you stop it. And I'm going to go ahead and back this up to March the 9th, which is the race day. And we'll start early. Now it looks like the swell comes up to around 2 feet with a short period early, but as the day goes on, that swell height backs away from the coastline, so we get a decrease in swell heights. So I'm looking at about 1 to 2 foot swells, and the periods can be very short depending on the wind and the tides. You'll see some choppy areas, but for the most part the swell looks to be a little bit on the low side, so not too bad out there. Especially with 8 to 12 knot winds, it won't be anything really to be concerned about. So I think that's going to do it for this forecast. I don't have really much else to say except we'll just cross our fingers and hope those winds come up a little bit more. We don't want to be stuck with 3 to 7 knots like we've seen before, especially last year. I think it was the second day of the Charleston Race Week. We saw that marine layering effect where it was very weak offshore, and then when we get inside the harbors, 18 to 20 knots. So I don't think it's going to be that extreme. I think we'll still have some decent synoptic flow off the coastline, and then probably something a little bit milder than what we saw last year during that particular day. But every day is different, and I'll leave it at that, and I'll go ahead and finish this out, post it. So enjoy the video. I'll be back, if not tomorrow. I may come and try to do a quick update. I'll be on Saturday morning for a final update early, probably before sunrise, so keep your eyes open for that, and that'll be posted in the skipper's information under the offshore wind and weather as well. Until next time, everyone take care. Cross your fingers for the win. Thank you.